following is a production of Cary TV, the Town of Cary's government access channel.
Hi, and welcome to the January meeting of the Operations Committee. Today we have a scout with us today from Troop 316, and we want to welcome you here. Thank you very much for coming. On our agenda, it's a very short agenda today. We just have 2 items under consent. Do either of you want an item pulled from the consent agenda? Nope. Okay, we only have 2 items for discussion as well. The first one is the fiscal year 2013 street improvements project, Mr. Tim Bailey.
Good afternoon, committee members. Each year we bring you a list of streets for improvements, which is primarily repaving and resurfacing of our street based on our pavement condition. We hire an independent consultant to rank our streets and give it a numbering system. This year we're proposing to use approximately $2 million of our funding plus about another $2 million of the recently approved bond money as part of the streets. From that, we've developed a list. The first list is the streets in the lowest priority ranking, and it's a table A. Then we also look at gaps. So if we're paving this year one segment, another section, we want to make sure we don't leave out that gap in the middle unless it's in very good condition. So the second list is the gaps that we recommend as staff that are either between or adjacent to a segment that we believe are low enough we should just go ahead and include this year. So with that, staff recommends that we approve table A and B, and we will always note that we make minor adjustments. If we run out of funds, we'll actually shorten the list up a little bit based on priority. If we have a little extra, we'll actually add a few based on the priority system as well. So just to let you know, this is a little flexible as we move forward and receive bids. We'll make those adjustments.
Okay, and for the citizens out there who are wondering why we took $2 million from our bond referendum, the reason why is because our roads have been degrading as we have been trying to manage our budget and not spend too much money. Do you want to elaborate on that, Mr. Bailey?
Yes, in recent years we have been, with the tight budget, we have constrained our capital program, and we've actually reduced a little bit of our street repaving money. So when we had our bond referendum, we actually put an item for $5 million in that list for actually repaving some of those streets, trying to get caught up, if you will. And we'll be spending the first portion of that. Likely we'll do the next portion next year. These projects are usually done over the next summer and done by December of the year. So we're about a year out. So that's where we stand on everything.
Okay, great. Do you have questions?
Just one that there were 453 miles of town roads. Did you also survey the state-owned road as well, or?
We did not survey in the current cycle the state-owned roads. There's about 100 miles of state-owned roads in the system. Of course, they're much wider than ours. They're usually 4 lanes instead of most of our subdivision roads are 2 lanes. We have done that in the past just out of curiosity, and in general, the condition of those roadways is a little lower than ours, but you also need to consider that they carry a much higher volume. So knowing that, the state's probably even a bigger gap than you may think, considering the number of people that are impacted on those road corridors for the state system. So it is something we've looked at in the past. We did not this year. I can get you that older information if that's important to you, but it's clearly going to be out of date.
Well, I'm curious because a lot of the roads that people think are town of Cary roads, like
Maynard.
Right, Cary Parkway, High House, some of the roads where they use more often to get to work or to get to events are actually not town-owned roads. And when complaints come in, which I'm sure they do, what do we tell a citizen with regards to that?
First of all, we will take the complaint and pass it on to DOT, so we don't just transfer the citizen. Secondly, we've been trying to share with citizens information. We actually had a little bit of a marketing program about 3 years ago trying to give them information. We actually put a link on our website on Maps Online that shows whether it's a state road or a local road, because there's a few that don't match the criteria just because they're 4-lane, they're state. So we've shared that information, and we get reasonable response from the state in making those pothole repairs, but they do not have enough funding to just resurface everything. So those resurfacing, they similar to us, they have a budget and they rank all of their streets within all of Wake County is the district that we're within. And then they prioritize the maintenance dollars they have. But unfortunately, the state's revenues are well down. Gas tax revenues continue to drop, and they're held, which is the primary funding source. So there will probably continue to be challenges of getting roads resurfaced, but there is that basic maintenance. They are very responsive in that part of it.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have a quick question for you about a difference I've seen on some roads. Some roads, when we repave, we go right up to that white concrete curb, and we don't overlap it. Other streets, I've seen it where it overlaps. How do we make that decision?
The town's direction from this committee has been that the first overlay of a street, that we will make that overlay and leave a small lip where the concrete curb and gutter is met. The second overlay of a street, we will pave into the gutter line up to the face of the curb. And then that's usually about all we can get. And after that, we have to start milling the old pavement out, which gets to be very expensive, and making overlays going forward with milling. So we're looking more closely at that standard now. The pavement sections have gotten a little thicker based on the pavement type. We're also looking, a lot of times we do a chip seal between to keep the cracks from reflecting. And we are looking at using thinner sections to help that crack reflection, to help with that lip and maybe extend our life into the curb and gutter before we lose capacity for storm drainage. So we're continuing to look at those things, but we have so far followed that general direction provided years ago from
It was
this
years ago.
committee.
I remember that a long, long time ago, but it was kind of fuzzy, what the stipulations were. My little comment, I don't think it looks nearly as good when you pave over that curb and gutter. So in any chance we can avoid that, that's my preference. But
Yeah, we understand that, and we do our best to balance the cost and the increased pavement life cycle from the thicker pavement that we obtain when we overlay. So there's a lot of things we're trying to balance, but we are looking at that program. If you'll recall, last year's staff report and this year's staff report, we're talking more about long-term asset management, where we're headed. We are working on a lot of those programs, and we may have some suggested changes related to those things coming in the future. So
okay, all right, that'd be good. Would that affect these streets here?
it will not.
It will not.
It will be future years.
Is there a way for you to indicate, or staff to indicate for us, which of these streets will have, is a second overlay or a third overlay, and we'll be going over that curb?
We could obtain that information. I do not have it right now, but I'm sure
yeah, I
staff
don't need
has
it.
it.
But I'd be interested in seeing that, like via email. Mr. Smith, do you have anything?
Is this plan, it's called the 2013 plan, is it really going to be done within that fiscal, or this calendar year, all of these streets?
Yes.
Wow, okay.
We
a lot of roadway.
have done a very good job of spending our money for street improvements before the December of the following cycle. So we have, I think, been on track for that probably for nearly a decade of spending our money that we receive in one year and getting that work done. it is close as we get a long list of streets, getting a contractor to do that much work before it gets too cold to pave. So we've run really close a couple of times, but we've met our goal for quite a while.
That's great.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, well, if there are no other comments or questions, we'll forward that to the council under consent. Okay, the next item is the fiscal year 2013 sidewalk priority list.
Good evening and thank you. For the 16th year, staff has compiled and ranked new and previously submitted but unfunded sidewalk requests to provide a list of prioritized projects within the allocated budget for council review and consideration. Using the existing town sidewalk policy, staff recommends that projects A through H be designed and constructed with a $500,000 budgeted for FY13, and that project I be removed from the list at this time due to significant construction constraints. Thank you, and I'll be glad to take any questions.
Okay. Laura, you've had some questions and some correspondence with Mr. Hart.
I have, and thank you, Mr. Hart, for all your time and energy and effort for answering all of my very probably detailed questions. Some of the questions that I had just for elucidation for the rest of you is there's a section along Old Apex Road off of High House where you come downtown from High House onto Old Apex Road where there's no sidewalk at all, or there's pieces of sidewalks along the way, and I've heard requests from citizens of the safest way to get downtown. So that I learned that was it 2 years ago, there was a section of that road that will be completed, you believe, this year. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then the other question I had was when the sidewalks around the roundabout might go in, and I believe you said that was around the same time as construction of the roundabout?
That's correct.
I see the affirmative head shaking in the back.
Always
Okay.
look for nods.
One other item that we talked about, and I know this is near and dear to your heart, is a request for sidewalks along Lauries Stevens. It's I think a half-mile section maybe from Carpenter up Church, and that section really close to Green Hope Elementary School. Would you like to share with me the information you found out about that section?
Yes. Last year we brought a staff report to council specifically addressing Lauries Stevens Road and that request. A lot of the problems there deal with the fact that the road has not been improved to its ultimate width and has no curb and gutter, and there's some topography issues. If you look at the table, we did cost it out, and it clocks in at around $578,000. So it's cost prohibitive at this point to do that. And there are sections within the Caremore PDD that have not been completed yet, that if the developer was to come in and develop the property, they'd be responsible for installing those.
So that's, if I remember correctly, that cost of that section is more than the entire sidewalk budget.
That's correct.
Is that right?
Is the ultimate cross-section supposed to be 3 lanes in there?
Yes.
Okay. So it's not just a matter of adding the sidewalk, it's about extending it to its future width.
Correct.
And is the sidewalk planned on the east side or the west side of Lauries Stevens?
The east side.
Oh, okay.
And then is there a multi-use path planned on the west side? Is that,
Yes.
okay. So if we wanted to put the sidewalk in there, let's say we magically found $578,000, would we try to widen the road and then put the sidewalk, curb and gutter and sidewalk in? Or would we just put in a curb and gutter and a sidewalk
On one side.
on one side, and then the future lane would be added to the other side?
The latter, it'd be the curb, gutter, and sidewalk.
Would be added to the east side, and then later, the additional lane, all of it would be added to the west side when construction happened?
Correct.
Okay.
And I don't know if you share my concern, but there are a lot of pedestrians, a lot of cyclists, a lot of kids who take that shortcut for either from Green Hope High School, from the tennis center, from the soccer fields, from Green Hope Elementary, or the 4 or 5 neighborhoods. It just seems a very well-traveled area, and I would hate for us to put off doing something for the safety of the citizens until something, unfortunate happened. There's also no no side way to get off of that.
There's no shoulder.
There's no shoulder, there's no gap, there's no way for someone to pull off to the side.
Yeah, and people are walking that
Every
all
day.
hours, every day, all hours of the day. So this is something we've talked about before. So I guess one question I have is, each year we rank these different sidewalk requests and try to do as many as we can that have been requested, but we rank these based in need. If we were to put aside the cost and the fact that we'd have to put in curb and gutter on this project, how would it rank compared to other sidewalk projects? Would it be a higher or highest priority if we disregarded cost and curb and gutter?
The cost would still be prohibitive as far as the ranking is concerned. It would only change slightly.
It's not the highest priority if you just look at safety concerns.
Safety and concerns are not part of the existing
Ranking?
sidewalk rankings. However, considerations such as distance to schools, parks, greenways, existing sidewalk, shopping, those are all factored in
Okay.
as far as, yeah.
So how come we don't consider safety in the ranking?
I don't believe that we have, and I could be unsure, I'm unsure about this, but pedestrian statistics on pedestrian.
Okay, so it's because you have no metric, basically, like a fixed metric. It would just be like a judgment call, like this seems unsafe, or this is, Okay.
Correct.
All right, that makes sense. Okay. Well, I think we still need to, in the future, we need to kind of look
Consider.
for some way to make this happen. Because we've talked to landowners out there. I mean, there's not a prospect for having most of that land developed anytime in the near future. And when I say near future, 10 to 15 years. And that's a long time to have.
Lewis Stevens is the gateway to the tennis center, to two elementary schools, a high school, the library, a
A lot of
number
public
of places.
amenities along there.
Exactly.
Okay. All right, well, we'll talk about it more separate from this.
Yeah.
Unless you want to just pull all the funding for all of these projects.
No, I'm not suggesting that.
And bring $78,000 of your own money to the table, which I'm sure you would do if you had it.
I would.
I know you would. Okay, all right, so Jack, do you have any comments about these sidewalks on this list now that we've just been joking around? Sorry.
No, I think we have a good policy, and I think we're comparing apples and oranges to the concern the two of you have. And, if it's a priority, then something else gives on the budget, and put it up in the budget. I think it's a separate bucket. Unless you want to go back and just revisit the whole policy and the criteria, that's okay too. Because if you want to do that, I just think we need to have expectations as citizens. I don't, with all due respect, I don't see comparing that with each of these needs here. So, to me, if that is a council concern, that for all those reasons you gave, the paths to the tennis center and everything else, then that merits council discussion. Is that something we should look at? The question that we should just also ask is, does that mean we revisit this whole sidewalk policy? And that's a fair question to ask, and we look at that. And there may be, at some point in time, an argument that says this compelling need to do one critical project supersedes 9 other projects. That we just have to know the consequences of all those things. We evolved to having a metric driven, and you bring up a good point. If there's no metric for safety, I mean, some of the safety is embedded into some of those metrics, but you don't have a metric, so that is kind of a wild card. But it never hurts to revisit the policy and the metrics that we use, and that's a fair thing. We're just kind of caught in, being broke.
We are.
So you try to do the best, and I do understand the safety concern. I've mentioned many times before, my daughter's been hit by a car, so these things are near and dear to my heart too. But it's just a tough call, and I suspect the magnitude and size of that needs to be looked at with other capital projects.
Exactly.
That's what I really think.
Yeah, it's
You're
large
right.
enough.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's just my perspective.
yeah.
If I may add, daily traffic volume is one of the metrics that figures into.
Oh, okay.
Another kind of safety-related metric that does go into the ratings.
Okay, all right, well, that's good to know. Good, okay, I need to go back and look at that ranking system, so. All right, thank you very much. Well, the list otherwise looks great. So I would recommend we go ahead and move it to the full council under consent.
Yep.
Agree?
I agree.
Okay. And that concludes our meeting of the January Operations Committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This has been a production of Cary TV. Visit the Town of Cary's website at townofcary.org.